Thank you everyone for joining the Q3 Women in Business webinar. As a reminder too, before we get started, there will be a questions box on your screen. So put questions in there. We're not going to answer them as they come in, but there'll be time at the end to answer those. So make sure you put them in so you don't forget at the end. And today I have the pleasure of introducing two industry leaders, Becky Swansburg and Barb Golan. Becky, if you could go to the introduction slides, that would be great. Perfect. So we'll be talking about driving production and the role that life insurance can have for women who want a balanced practice. Becky Swansburg is the CEO of Stonewood Financial, so she'll be dropping some knowledge on us from that aspect too. And Stonewood Financial is a consistently evolving software company that breaks down those intricate topics into simple concepts for the client. So Becky's a nationally recognized public speaker and author. She's extremely knowledgeable on legislative risk and is a national trainer helping advisors incorporate those tax-efficient retirement strategies into their practices. She's gifted more of her time and expertise to many major organizations and was actually named Business First prestigious 40 under 40 list of community leaders and is a Bingham Fellow through the Leadership Louisiana Center. The other industry leader I have the pleasure of introducing is going to be Barb Golan. So she's the owner and founder of BG Wealth, and she found her calling in the financial services industry driven by a passion to help federal employees like her parents and to make sure that each client's vision of a successful retirement is possible. Barb also has this amazing talent to be able to break down those complex financial concepts into a straightforward language, which pairs really well with Stonewood. So as a little bragging right, she is in the top 10 with Radiant Life Brokerage and is actually ranked as #1 out of women. So thank you, Barb, and thank you, Becky, for being here. We appreciate having you on here and can't wait to hear from you.
Great to be here. I think we're going to turn it over to Becky first, and then we'll open it up for Q&A after she's done with her presentation. So take it away, Becky.
Great. Well, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with you today, talking about this thing that you might have heard of. We've got an election coming up. It's been in the news a little bit. It's been on some people's minds. But I'm particularly passionate about helping advisors frame up the election, particularly in a year like this, to help their clients make informed, proactive decisions to protect themselves against some of these risks coming from Washington. And life insurance has a huge role to play in that. My background, just briefly, is actually originally in government and politics. Before I came over to insurance and financial services, I started my career in Washington. I worked in the White House under George W. Bush during his first administration. And then I moved over to Capitol Hill, where I worked for a couple different members of Congress and the Speaker of the House. And I say all of that because one of the starkest realizations I had when I was in Washington was this realization that most Americans have no idea the tremendous impact that Washington can have on the success or failure of their retirement approach. You know, we're so focused on the marketplace and on longevity, but we forget that while the market grows our assets and longevity determines how long those assets need to last, it's really taxes that determine how much of our assets we get to keep and how much we have to send to the IRS in Washington, D.C. in the form of taxes. So knowing that our clients, like most of America, has billions and billions of dollars total in these tax-deferred vehicles, 401ks and IRAs, 403bs, we know that they have this large retirement tax bill coming due in the future. So how can we help them identify that tax bill, quantify it, and then address it? That's what I want to talk about this morning. So when we think about what the impact of this election could be, there is so many different topics, right? Where are capital gains rates going to be? Are there going to be SALT adjustments, inflation, Medicare taxes, credits and deductions? What is going to happen with the Trump tax cuts? Plenty of things to discuss with your clients. The challenge is that most American savers have an attention span of 47 seconds, and they can only hold 3 meaningful items in their mind at a time. So we cannot come to them, even though we know these are all risks, with this just plethora of challenges that could come out of this election. What we have to do is frame up the election and today's legislative environment into something that our clients can understand and take action on. So, I love in an election year, people always say, let's read the tea leaves on this election. But what we really need to do is leverage this election to uncover risks that our clients are going to face, not just in the next 4 years, but in the next 10, 20, 30, and 40 years into the future. So that starts here. When it comes to taxes in retirement, there are only 3 things that can happen to your clients. Their taxes can be lower than they are today, the same as they are today, or higher than they are today. Now, I know you did not have to join a webinar to learn this, but the real challenge is that a lot of our clients and a lot of our prospects that are coming to your seminars or converting on forms on your website, they haven't evaluated which of these scenarios is likely to be true for them. And will they be okay if a different scenario is true? Will they still have enough income to last through retirement? So what we have to help them do is understand the 2 ways that Washington can impact their retirement approach. And these 2 ways are very closely related. Risk is about your level of taxation in retirement. What is your tax bracket? How much in taxes do you end up paying? Legislative risk is about the structure of taxation in retirement. What is taxed, when it's taxed, how it's taxed, and who it is taxed for. So when these 2 things combine, your level of taxation and then the things and the method in which your assets are taxed, you can see that there's a lot of opportunity for Congress to change the rules and for those rule changes to negatively impact your client's retirement approach. Now, from my years on Capitol Hill, in the White House, and of course, all my work I've done since then, I truly believe, that we are in a rising tax environment for our clients. These are people that are upper middle class and above that have done a good job saving. There's a little bit of a bullseye on them and specifically their retirement assets. So I want to talk about why. And to be fair, the reason why is not wholly political. So every year, the Congressional Budget Office actually comes out with a report where it looks at the previous fiscal year, every dollar the government took in and every dollar the government spent. It's pretty amazing that this is all just public information that is out there for us to look at. So this is the most recent report from March of this year, and it looks at fiscal year 2023. So in fiscal year 2023, let's look at what the situation is in Washington and how that could impact your clients legislatively to come. All right, in the last fiscal year, our federal government took in $4.4 trillion of revenue. Primarily, the majority of that came from individual income taxes you, me, and our clients pay. Now, 4.4 trillion is a lot of money, unless, of course, you spend more than $4.4 trillion. I can't tell you if your business is doing well just looking at the money you bring in. I need to look at your expenditures as well so that we can see what kind of profit you have. And that's where I think this story gets interesting for our government. So remember, we take in $4.4 trillion in revenue. What did we spend? The first area where our government spends money is on what I call mandatory spending. Mandatory spending is spending that is currently codified in law. This is not spending that Congress or the president have anything to do with. It's just the required spending our government have to do this year based on the laws currently in place. By far, the 2 largest areas of mandatory spending are Social Security and Medicare. So the last fiscal year alone, mandatory spending ran our government about $3.8 trillion. Now, there's one other area of spending that Congress and the president don't control, and that is, of course, the net interest that we pay every year to service our debt. And because we have a very large federal debt right now, and we are paying at higher interest rates, we are paying about, in the last fiscal year, $600 billion of net interest on the debt, which means total non-discretionary spending for our country in the last fiscal year ran $4.4 trillion. Just to put a fine point on this, our government took in $4.4 trillion of revenue. And before Congress even met, before the president had a single proposal and Congress passed a single bill, we had already spent every single dollar of revenue we had just on our required spending. Now, of course, Congress did spend money in the last fiscal year. That's what we call discretionary spending. And you know, congressional spending gets a bad rap. I agree, they spend too much money. But we could never get this number down to zero because a lot of that spending is important spending for the country. Military and the defense of our nation, all of that spending is here in discretionary spending. Transportation, infrastructure, roads, bridges, all of that is also included here in discretionary spending. So in the last fiscal year, Congress spent about another $1.7 trillion for a grand total of $6.1 trillion of spending. Now, I'm going to assume that everyone on the call has completed third grade math, and we can all do subtraction. If we are spending 6.1 trillion and we are only taking in 4.4 trillion, that is leaving us with a $1.7 trillion gap. And that is what is our deficit, and that is what is driving this massive growth in federal debt. This is not sustainable. Everyone knows that. The question is, what can we do about it? Well, when we look at this equation, where can we affect change? By far, the best thing for us to do would be somehow get under control this mandatory spending. The challenge with that is that the US population is rapidly aging. In fact, we had the most rapid growth of Americans aged 65 plus in the last 100 years occurred between the 2010 and the 2020 census. Remember what I said were the two primary things driving mandatory spending? Social Security and Medicare. The challenge is we are not faced with a political problem when it comes to our mandatory spending. We're faced with a demographic problem. It's just a math problem of the number of Americans that need these services and benefits. So if we can't really control mandatory spending, which will actually accelerate into the future, maybe we could get net interest under control. Well, the challenge is our debt is so large now, and because interest rates are elevated, in fiscal year 2023, we spent about $600 billion on the debt, but in calendar year 2023, we spent almost $1 trillion just servicing our debt. And most experts think 2024 is going to be the first year we exceed $1 trillion just servicing the debt. All right, if we can't get mandatory spending under control because of demographics and we can't get our net interest down, here's an idea. Maybe Congress could spend less money. No one is holding their breath for that to save us, rightfully so. Because actually, congressional debate in recent years has not been over reducing spending. The debate in Washington has been under slowing the growth of spending. So last year, our federal budget was set at about $1.6 trillion. And if you remember the intense debate we had in January to avoid a government shutdown, finally, the Republicans had a win and they limited spending to $1.66 trillion. So we're still spending more each year. It's just we're trying to slow the growth rate of that. Additionally, of course, Congress is spending trillions of extra dollars in spending bills, things like Build Back Better Act. If you remember the pandemic, economic stimulus was about $3.5 trillion. We had the Infrastructure and Jobs Act in 2021 that was another $1.7 trillion. The Inflation Reduction Act in 2022, which was, I think, $740 billion, and so on and so on. So here is where we are faced. If we cannot get mandatory spending under control, spend less servicing our debt, or dramatically reduce the amount Congress spends, you know where's the only place on this equation that Congress can affect change? Raising taxes. And remember, the majority of that 4.4 trillion is already coming from our clients and us in our individual income taxes. Actually, the situation has gotten worse since then. And I do want to put a point on this. The Congressional Budget Office actually put out an update this summer where it essentially said that increases in interest costs and mandatory spending are going to outpace any decreases in discretionary spending and current growth in revenues. So basically what they're saying is our mandatory spending is going to break us even if we raise a little more revenue in the year ahead. So that's pretty significant. Real question though, will it impact our clients? Do our clients need to care? And the reason that I think so many of our clients don't know that they need to care is because we've consistently heard this. Oh, don't worry. Nobody making less than $400,000 a year will see their taxes raised, period. We've heard this on the campaign trail and the halls of Congress again and again. And it is absolutely not true. And I say that not because I'm calling out politicians liars, but because this doesn't consider the real ways that taxes could rise on our clients. So as you're meeting with your clients, I think it's important to consider, would either of these two ways that taxes can rise for your clients in retirement potentially happen to them? So the first is that brackets can change. This is the way most of us think about our taxes changing. This is that tax risk. Well, while the promise of tax deferred savings was supposed to be that in retirement you can have dramatically lower bracket rates than you do while saving, many of our clients don't want to give up the lifestyle that they're living, so they can't take dramatically less income, so they can't get into significantly lower tax brackets. But there's another reason where tax brackets can change around us, even if your clients end up using less income. If you remember in 2017, Congress passed and the president signed into law the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, sometimes called the Trump tax cuts. Well, those are set to expire next year, which means that unless Congress and the president extend those cuts, all of our tax bracket rates are reverting to their older higher rates in 2026. Now, I think looking at the election outcome, if Trump gets elected, he has said he would like to make a push to extend these brackets reductions. If Harris gets elected, she said that she will only extend them for lower income Americans. But here's the thing, we are going to have a close House and Senate. It could be hard for either candidate to get another reduction through, especially when we know the country needs income. So I think we need to at least plan and prepare that we only really have 2 more years at these lower bracket rates. Now, while that's depressing, it does give us an opportunity. Because if our clients are considering changing the tax status of any of their retirement assets, converting maybe an IRA, withdrawing some funds, paying the taxes, and let's say putting it into an IUL policy for some supplemental retirement income and death benefit protection, they can actually do so today at a discount. But that window is shrinking. Our bracket rates are most likely all reverting to their older higher rates come 2026. The other way, though, that taxes can change for your clients that they might not be considering is just new or creative taxes that Congress might enact. I sometimes call these stealth taxes. A great example of this is actually Social Security. So you might know Social Security benefits today taxable up to 85% of that benefit, but it wasn't always that way. Social Security wasn't taxable originally, and then in the 80s under Reagan, it became taxable up to 50% of the benefit. And in the 90s under Clinton, we passed new laws and it became taxable up to its current 85%. Tomorrow, Congress could pass a new law and make 100% of your Social Security taxable. Your clients' tax brackets wouldn't change, but of course, they would have less money to spend in retirement because they'd be paying more in taxes. We also saw a little bit of this legislative risk with the Secure Act in terms of inherited IRAs. When the stretch IRAs were limited for most inheritors of an IRA, and they have to limit their, they have to drain those accounts within 10 years. Well, again, no one changed those people's brackets, but suddenly they have to take the income whether or not they want it, which means they have to pay taxes on it, whether or not they need it. So how can you help? It is great to uncover these risks for our clients, but of course, we don't want to just strike fear in their hearts. The great thing about being a financial professional, and particularly on the life insurance side of our industry, you know, we are not hope agents. We don't want to go give our clients hope. We are confidence agents. Our job is to help improve our clients' confidence that no matter what happens in Washington, their retirement approach will be okay. So we've got to help them identify, quantify, and address this risk. So here's what I like to do. This is actually some software that Stonewood has developed to quantify a saver's potential retirement tax bill in the future. And so if this interests you to use in your practice, get in touch with your VP at Gradient. I know Barbara and a lot of the Gradient advisors use this software to help evaluate taxes and retirement for their clients and then propose good solutions. So let's take a sample client. I've made him 60 years old. I've gifted him $1.5 million fake IRA. So let's take a third of that IRA, $500,000 for this evaluation. And let's say, what are the potential taxes that $500,000 of his IRA may generate as a retirement tax bill? And is there anything we can do about it? So I've given him a 5% annual growth rate and a 20% effective tax rate, state and federal. All of these are assumptions that obviously you can make with your clients. I'm just using some samples for this. All right, what might his retirement tax bill be? The first place where he will pay taxes is here. At some point in his 70s, the government will actually say, hold on, sir, you have deferred your taxes long enough, and now every year you'll need to take required minimum distributions and pay taxes on those funds. RMDs alone are going to run him about $190,000 in taxes. Now, if he doesn't need those monies as income, too bad, he still has to take them out, and now he has to reinvest them somewhere at an after-tax rate. That'll drag another $60,000 into his tax bill. Of course, if he spent those RMDs as income, that line wouldn't be there. You can model that out as well. But finally, when he dies, is he done with the IRS? Oh no, he has just passed that responsibility and tax bill along to his heirs. IRAs and 401ks are really terrible ways to leave a legacy because one of two things tends to happen. First, that account passes to your spouse, who is suddenly paying at a single rate rather than a joint rate. So that's the widow's penalty that we hear about. Or it passes on to your heirs at some of their highest earning years. And now because the Secure Act eliminated stretch IRAs, they got to drain that account in 10 years. So him and his heirs are in this for about another $183,000 in taxes for a grand total of a retirement tax bill on a $500,000 portion of his IRA of about $434,000. Now, if our sample client does not like that retirement tax bill, of course, we can reallocate to tax-free. And this is where a lot of our clients know about Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks, but I think IUL, Index Universal Life, and cash value life insurance in general has such a unique role to play. And we'll talk a little bit about why IUL can protect against some risks that Roths can't in just a second. But first, just let's look at this conversion to a tax-free account. Let's say your client's heard of a Roth. Of course, on that conversion at a 20% effective tax rate, let's say we spread it out over 5 years, we'll pay a total of $100,000 of taxes. But then, of course, nothing is paid as the account grows in his access. Nothing is paid at death when it goes to their heirs. They're out the door for $100,000. I can already feel someone saying, all right, Becky, but if my client converts $500,000 of their IRA, it's going to bump their taxes up during the conversion years. Sure, absolutely. Let's say that they have a 25% total tax liability during the conversion years. All right, so now their retirement tax bill is $125,000. Still better than $434,000? Yeah, you bet. One of the reasons that I think this report is so powerful is because it's going to help uncover for your client a very stark reality. There is a mandatory minimum tax bill that your client has today in his or her IRA or 401k. That's that $125,000 in this example. If we bought out the IRS today, took care of our tax responsibility, that's the minimum tax we could pay. We can't do anything to help our clients with that. That tax was built from how they've saved in the past. However, this analysis shows that this client could pay $434,000 in taxes, which means there are about $300,000 of optional taxes that this client can choose to pay or avoid based not on how they've saved in the past, but on what they do from today going forward. This conversion is so important to help address the risks in Washington. Now, of course, the tax-free is a pretty big area. Which tax-free vehicle should we help our clients with? And this is where I really want to make a plug for cash value life insurance. I personally have IRA money. I have TSP money, which is like government 401k money. I have Roth accounts. I have a Roth IRA. The reason I also diversified to include IUL in my retirement approach was because of this. A Roth account does a great job protecting us from tax risk. If taxes go up in the future, your Roth account, because your taxes have already been paid and you can access funds tax-free, will not be impacted. However, it does not protect against legislative risk. And here's why. A Roth account, just like a traditional account, is an account. And when Congress changes the rules on accounts, those rule changes take immediate effect, which means whether your clients realize it or not, the tax code that they were promised when they were saving for retirement may not be the same set of rules they get when they access those funds in retirement. The reason I diversified into IUL is because IUL is not an account. Like all life insurance, it is a contract. And the courts have upheld time and time again that when Congress changes the rules on contracts, they can change the rules on contracts going forward, but they cannot retroactively apply those rule changes to contracts currently in place, which means that the funds in your client's IUL policy will always have the tax status they've been promised. And we've seen this time and time again. If you remember in the 80s and early 90s when we had the TAMRA and TEFRA reform, we saw consistently Congress's ability and the court's willingness to uphold this, that they could apply MEC rules to policies going forward. But if you had a pre-reform policy, it could be as MECy as you want. It still had the tax rules you were promised. So in today's environment, as we look at what's happening in Washington, the volatility of this election, Roths are great vehicles for addressing tax risk. But if we want to also address this legislative risk, there's a real urgent need for our clients to continue or to consider cash value life insurance as part of that retirement approach. Because it's all just about how many risks we can mitigate for our clients. You know, it's funny, I love using the election to leverage these meaningful conversations with our clients. But the truth of the matter between you and me is this. The thing that is driving legislative risk for your clients in retirement is not actually if Republicans or Democrats win the White House and the House and Senate in November. It matters, but it's not the key thing that matters. If your client only wants to be retired for the next 4 years, great. Let's look at the election, read the tea leaves, and tell them what's coming. But most of our clients want to be retired for the next 10, 20, 30, for some of them even 40 years into the future, which means they have to manage 12 to 15 election cycles. The thing that drives legislative risk in retirement is that in America, we have new government every 2 years because we have elections every 2 years. The thing that drives legislative risk is the instability and unpredictability of what might be coming from Washington. So it is critical that we help our clients just as we help them diversify against market risk and maybe incorporate an annuity to diversify against income risk. Tax and legislative risk are the final frontier of retirement planning, and we have to make sure that they are also protected against the risk of rising taxes and the risk of Congress changing the rules. And we can beat down both of those risks. We can address them both with IUL and other cash value life insurance as part of a comprehensive retirement approach. So we have an election toolkit that has all sorts of resources. We also here at Stonewood have a retirement tax bill lead generation program that shares this story. If you are interested in either of those, I will put up a QR code. You can download the toolkit. But before I do that, I want to end with my very favorite quote by this man. This is Judge Learned Hand. He is a U.S. Court of Appeals judge, he's dead now. He is actually the most quoted lower court judge by the U.S. Supreme Court. Some people think that is because he was brilliant. I think it was because he was very, very witty in everything he said. This is my favorite quote. He said, there are two systems of taxation in this country, one for the informed and one for the uninformed. I think it's our duty as financial professionals to help make sure our clients are saving for retirement under the system of taxation for the informed. And I truly believe for many of our clients that will involve cash value life insurance to protect against these risks. So I want to make sure you have the resources to go share this story with your clients and prospects. If you want to use this QR code, you can download for free some election memo that I've written sharing this story with your clients, some different videos that you can watch and use on social media, on your website that help tell this tax and legislative risk story here in the election year. Of course, my email's up there. It's just Becky@stonewoodfinancial.com. If you have any questions, I know we're going to get to Q&A, but I also know sometimes you're watching a recording of this or someone shared it with you. Please get in touch. I truly believe that this election year gives us a unique opportunity, not just through November, but as we enter into this new administration, new House, new Senate through the spring, to communicate with our clients about the risks coming from Washington and help them fix that through life insurance. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to any questions that we might have.
Becky, I'm going to start with the questions and maybe start the dialogue a little bit.
Yeah.
For the advisors that are either on this webinar or watching the recording that don't know how to get started in life insurance, but they've got a book of business, what's the best way to start by approaching some of those clients that we see that have that excess income, or that we can look down the road and see they're going to have a pretty significant tax problem?
So I think one of the best ways to do that is through your annual reviews. If you have a book of business and you are meeting with your clients annually to review their approaches, I love sending a letter, email, communication ahead of that meeting and letting them know that we're going to be looking at how their current approaches are managing market risk and income risk. But then we're also going to talk about now helping complete their retirement approach by addressing tax risk and legislative risk. And I use that phrase a lot. You know, you don't want right versus wrong. I love complete versus incomplete, because incomplete does not mean your client's done anything wrong. They've probably done a great job working with you to fix a set of problems. Now we can come in and complete it by also addressing tax and legislative risk. The other place that I just think it's powerful is, you know, this election toolkit I have up, you can download these memos and brochures that just help uncover this risk for your clients. Once your clients understand the risk coming out of Washington and how it could impact their retirement income, it's an easy conversation to then have about fixing it. It doesn't take a lot to convince them Washington could impact their retirement assets. They just have to see the ways in which it's likely and know that there are some solutions that can help them protect against it. A lot of times with taxes, people kind of feel like, oh, I don't know what to do. They're coming at me no matter what. They've met with their CPA. There's a bigger picture here that we can help them solve.
Mm-hmm. And something about the life insurance product of today versus life insurance product 20 years ago, there's a lot more latitude in underwriting than there used to be. And when we are building a life insurance, like an IUL policy, you know, Chuck is going to teach us that we're always, always, always focusing on that death benefit. And that is the primary purpose. For some of our clients, we're not going to be able to get them completely out from under that pre-tax umbrella. And providing a tax-free death benefit to the kids helps offset some of that tax liability that they're going to have to pay for getting that qualified money out in 10 years. We talk about that a lot when I'm visiting with my clients. And we also talk about—
Wait, before we go on, you know, that's a great point. There's all this talk in Washington. You know, the estate tax exemptions are also set to expire in 2025, going into 2026. they'll be reduced in half, adjusted for inflation. But do you know what is one of the largest estate taxes that faces our clients? It's the income tax on the assets they plan to pass to the next generation. So just because your client's assets don't reach the estate tax exemption levels doesn't mean that they aren't going to have a tax on that estate when it passes. And that's where life insurance with its tax-free death benefit has a huge role to play, not just in kind of thwarting taxes for your client in retirement, but also in thwarting taxes for their heirs after they pass.
Yep. When we talk to our clients, we talk about how this is a multi-generational approach to managing some tax risk.
Absolutely.
So sounds like you agree with me on that one.
I do agree. I will say the other real piece of this is getting ourselves comfortable of framing up life insurance for death benefit protection, absolutely, but also for the supplemental retirement income. And one framework I like to use for that is I just say, look to the tax code. You know, a lot of times our clients, I think, are thinking like, do I want a 401k? Do I have an IRA? Do I have IUL? It's like these products. But they're all just sections under 77 or sections under Title 26 of the tax code. So all the ways that Americans save are in Title 26 of the tax code. Section 401k of Title 26 of the tax code provides for 401ks. Section 403b provides for 403bs. IRAs are in there, you name it. Well, Section 7702 covers life insurance. So some of it is helping our clients not think we're choosing products for them, but understanding we're just looking to the tax code and saying what part of the code is most beneficial for us to save under for your income and legacy needs. And Section 7702 has a lot of protection from legislative risks, some of those other sections don't.
It does. And then when we've got somebody who's in good health, who's applying for this, frequently with IUL products, we also get some enhanced long-term care benefits that go along with it. It's not long-term care insurance, but should they meet those criteria for needing long-term care, they can start drawing on that death benefit prematurely and utilizing that, again, helping to preserve the rest of the estate that they want to pass along.
It's interesting to note an average 65-year-old couple today will spend on average in retirement $315,000 on the medical cost of aging, on health costs. So when we have clients come in and they have $1 million IRA, most of them, I don't think in their head have a third of that earmarked just for healthcare costs. And so I absolutely agree, Barbara, leveraging those long-term care benefits within IUL policies that allow you to draw on that higher death benefit level for additional funds, it can be a really valuable part of this narrative.
It really does become a multifaceted tool for completing your client's financial plan.
Absolutely right. Great.
The request that came in is if you can elaborate a little bit more on how you actually implement these concepts into your appointment process.
Me or Becky?
Barbara, why don't you start? Because you're the pro.
All right. Well, okay, a little quick tutorial. You don't want to go into a financial meeting with clients leading with life insurance. It's going to scare them away. We as professionals know the tools and know what we need to implement, but they need to get to know us so that we trust them. They trust us. And the first step is always going to be in gathering the assets. I start talking to my clients about having tax problems. If it's very obvious in the first appointment, if it's on the fence, we're bringing it up in the second appointment when we're introducing the plan. I'm currently working with somebody who they have $1.7 million in qualified money, pre-tax. He is a federal employee. He's going to get a pension. They're both going to get Social Security. They have managed their financial affairs well, so there's not a whole lot of debt. They're not going to need to draw against those qualified funds. And they said in the first appointment, we're planning on leaving those to our kids. And I said, do you realize that you're handing them a huge tax bill while you're doing that? And would you be interested in finding out ways that we can help you pass along that legacy and maybe not send as much of it to Uncle Sam? Because I don't think you worked and saved for all of these years just to make Uncle Sam's coffers a little bit bigger. You want to keep that money in your family as much as possible. I have yet to encounter anybody that's like, yes, I'd like to have my kids pay more taxes. But this is a gradual process. If you start throwing it at them along with the investments at Gradient Investments, and if you're incorporating in a fixed indexed annuity, that specific product, it's overwhelming to the client. So it's important to do this in pieces and to do it gradually. Your first step as the advisor is to gather the assets so that you can start managing them and making sure that they are growing the way we want them to. Then we start diversifying things out, choosing the right fixed indexed annuity, looking at what they really need for income, looking at IRMA implications when it comes to Medicare supplements. Sometimes our clients are going to bite the bullet, especially while we're in this lower tax environment for the next couple of years, and pull a little bit more out to fund the indexed universal life insurance or in Roth conversion, knowing that it's temporary and that 3 to 5 years from now that we're going to drop in income once we've pulled some of this money out. And then the IRMA is Medicare Part B premium, for those of you that are newer to the industry or don't know what's going on there. The higher your income is, the higher your Medicare Part B premium is going to be. So we have some clients that don't want to hit that IRMA threshold, and then we have to get really creative with how we work around things. But for many of them, if we have to look at an increase in IRMA, we're looking at them and going, you're paying another $100 a month or whatever it is for 5 years. So that's $6,000 more that we're spending to save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. It's spelling it out for your clients. You've got to boil it down into language that they understand. We all get stuck in the jargon. If I sit there and talk to a client about, we're going to write you an IUL policy, and then we're going to be able to do this and this and this and this, their eyes have rolled into the back of their heads. I talk about us implementing a tool in their plan that is going to give us a tax-free bucket of money for them to access while they're alive, provide a tax-free bucket to their heirs when they're gone. And if we need it, more than likely we'll help supplement long-term care coverage in the middle. And I'm like, we're choosing the right tool for the job. I don't use a screwdriver to put a nail into a wall to hang a picture. I use a hammer. So it's about finding the right tool. And in this case, the right tool is life insurance. I know it might surprise you, but it's something that we're going to, over time, integrate into your plan to round things out for you and to try to minimize your future tax liability.
Perfect.
Did that answer the question?
I think it did.
All right, well,
any
thank you
other
guys.
questions?
Like I said, this is the year to focus on these topics. Let's see if I can share back up this. Let's see, maybe. Nah. I was going to say, Becky@stonewoodfinancial.com. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to send you our election toolkit and get you all the resources you need to position IUL here in this wild election year. So we'll be back
if
after
anybody
November.
wants
Maybe
to
we'll do an
visit
update.
with me, I'm always available. You can contact your marketer. They can get in touch with me.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Barbara.
All
We
right.
appreciate your knowledge.
Thank you. I'm willing to help anybody who needs it.